Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Tuesday, January 9th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, our second daily dose of happy for the day. And how you doing, Wendy? Are you feeling happy today?
Oh, my gosh. My world feels ecstatic, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Oh, all right. Well, then let's go to wins then, because I have a feeling there's a big win coming our way. What's the big win?
Well, there is a big win. So, one of the things I wanted to do this week while I was on vacation from my day job was to get a greater sense of clarity as to where I'm going in my career.
Okay.
And only because what happened is still so new, I don't feel comfortable like just sharing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that an opportunity came to me today in the most unusual way.
Really?
Where, yesterday while we were on doing their show, I had gotten a caller ID come through. And, of course, I'm not going to stop and go, hey, Walt, I'm going to put you on hold while I go grab a call.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Our listeners, thank you for that.
But the person was persistent and called several times, so I finally just jotted the phone number down. And, it wasn't any great big deal. I didn't feel any pull or tug toward it. But today, I just kind of took the phone number and I Googled it, and I wonder if this is a salesman trying to sell me something or if this is a legit thing. It could be a client calling me,
Sure.
So I want to honor it. And so I called this person, and based on what I found from the caller ID, I asked him if he was that person. He said yes. And apparently he was searching for me. He did a Google search. I think he found me on my website.
Mm-hmm.
Then he must have clicked on the link for LOA Today because he told me he heard our show on Friday.
Oh.
And bottom line, I'm who he was looking for
Okay.
a project that he's working on.
Great. Whoa.
And that was just so exciting to me because I was feeling like there was something out there that was something I would have never imagined. And the project he's working on is something I wouldn't have imagined.
Oh.
And yet it utilizes all of the skills that I have in the totality of all of my careers.
Wow.
So bottom line, he and I are going to meet on Thursday, and we're going to talk more about it. So that in itself, yes, the project sounds exciting, and I don't know what it is enough to say I'm even going to say yes or no, but here's why it was so thrilling to me. Because an opportunity, what felt like out of the blue, showed up where somebody recognized me for what I bring to the table, and that's why they wanted to talk to me.
And specifically you, not just somebody like you in particular.
Yeah. And I was like blown away because that's kind of what I've been focusing on lately and kind of the guidance, because that's what our show's going to be about today. The guidance I've been receiving is that the thing that I'm moving towards next in my career is not even known to me. It's not like I can just do a Google search for a certain industry, because this thing that is my next something is not one of those things I could just look up. And so I've just been in this state of trusting that it's going to come to me, and I figure my job is to just remain open and be in a state of complete believing that what's out there is mine and that it's coming to me and that there's nothing I have to do right now. So, to me, that's LOA at its finest. That's me working with the law of attraction, doing my part, staying open, receiving guidance, staying open to the guidance that's coming to me, and being willing to say yes.
And just to clarify,
I love when that happens.
Oh yeah, and just to clarify, this thing that you said you couldn't Google, the reason you couldn't Google it is because you didn't know what it would be.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's not like it's an industry. It's kind of like an entrepreneurial thing. So when someone has a startup company, you can't Google, hey, are you the startup company that I would love to work with?
Yeah, right, that's true.
They don't have their stuff out there yet. So it's that kind of thing where it wasn't something I could seek, but somebody went seeking for me because I fit into what they were looking for.
And that's just like the ultimate, compliment is more than a compliment. It's the ultimate experience because they wanted you specifically, and they went out of their way to find you specifically. Like, wow. I mean, that's just, I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
And he didn't know until he found me on Google that I was the one he was looking for.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't know who Wendy Dillard was.
Wow.
But he was looking for someone that had my skill set. And then when he, at least from what little we chatted about today, then when he listened to me on the show with you on our Friday show, he was even giving me some feedback of things that he heard me say, and he goes, yeah, that's the kind of person I'm looking for, someone who has this mindset, someone who believes this. And I'm like, wow.
So
So
you
I
actually...
went back and I re-listened to our Friday show. And go, what is it I said that
What did I say, right? So you really got the best of both worlds. First, he was looking for somebody who had your skill set, something similar to what you have. And then once he found it and listened to you, he was done with all the other candidates and he went after you. You got the best of both of those two worlds.
Yeah, it's so exciting to me. And like I said, if the project goes, if I get to be a part of the project, that in itself is one excitement. But just knowing that I am in a state of trusting that the universe is bringing to me what matches my desires is just so beautiful.
Yeah.
I just am loving it. Because, for almost every life coach that I've talked with, we're always saying, well, how do you find your target audience?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time our conversation is around how do we go from where we are and reach out and find them.
Sure, that's traditional marketing.
Yes, and I have had a sense for a long time that because of law of attraction being what it is, that I can rest in the opposite. I've made myself available. I'm out there. You can find me. I did a Google search the other day. I didn't even use my name. I just did Law of Attraction Coach Dallas. And I think I came up on 14 listings in the first 2 pages of Google.
Very good.
With all sorts of different things that I have on my website. And I didn't even have any LOA Today things, which I'm thinking eventually I'll start popping up with that too. But that let me know I'm out there. If people are looking for me, even if they don't know my name, I can be found.
It's reassuring because apparently it worked.
So, yeah, it's like the reverse of traditional marketing.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for them. They're looking for me. And all I have to do is be receiving so that when they call, I answer the phone.
That's really, really good. Wow. Well, it's a good thing we're talking about the topic of guidance today, although I do want to put one of my wins in today. It's actually our win.
Okay.
Because the show yesterday,
Oh.
or actually early this morning, the show had our 14,000th download since November 2016. So we're really moving along. Yeah, we're moving. We are moving along.
Wow.
We hit the last milestone, 13,000, 5 days ago.
I don't know about you, but I feel like I am in the swirling vortex of all sorts of goodness that both you and I are involved in.
Oh, yeah. And I have to tell you, too.
There's some things that we share and some things that we have separate, but it's like we are in a swirling vortex.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, I agree. Although I think yours is perhaps spinning a little bit faster. But
well,
the thing I was going to mention. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you first. Please, you go first.
I was going to say, one of the things that, I have said a couple times is that, post-show, when the show's over, you and I usually continue our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've noticed most of the time is that the conversation we have is not so much about the show that we've just had. We're not really debriefing what happened. We're talking about what's going forward. We're talking about what we desire.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm seeing how what we talk about after the show is absolutely moving things in a really positive and fast way.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's incredible, and it's fun, and, it's like, I look forward to our post-show as much as I do the show.
It does that. I mean, it's one of those things where I almost wish we could record it, although I wouldn't want to because some of the stuff that we talk about is stuff that is not ready for prime time yet. But nevertheless, there's a piece of me that wishes we could just record that part too because it's so good. It's the stuff that we get into is just intense, amazing, incredible stuff.
Hey, Walt, what is your win for the day?
My win for the day? Well, I already mentioned that we hit 14,000, so that's our win for the day. I've also been reaching out to a whole bunch of law of attraction coaches around the country and around the world because of this new project that we're working on. And I thought I would take a moment to just mention what that project is, kind of tease the listeners, so to speak, with it. Because what we are working on in the background is we are creating a book that is a collection of law of attraction manifestation stories as told by professional law of attraction coaches. And toward that end, I've been reaching out to people. I've been going out finding websites and so forth of law of attraction coaches and reaching out and putting feelers out and getting some really interesting feedback from people. Of course, I included all of the people who are currently the co-hosts of the show. I have people that I've been reaching out to locally for Louise and I to be friends with and so forth. I reached out to one of them, actually. Her name is Barbara. And when I wrote to Barbara about it, she said, wow, thanks for including me. This is going to be huge. And I said, cool.
Cool.
I like that one. I like that a lot. But I've been getting a lot of very positive responses. In fact, the only response that I got that wasn't positive was still okay. It just kind of surprised me that somebody actually wrote back to say, no, thank you. I mean, that was very polite of them to do that. But you don't get that very often, And I said, well, that's good. That's cool. But the rest of them that are writing back, they're saying, I want to know more. And so I send them, that 4-page outline that I put together. And they write back, whoa, I want to be a part of this. Like, good. This is good. I like this. So
that's very cool. Yeah. When you put that out to us co-hosts, I talked to 2 of my law of attraction coaches.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, my God, that's so exciting. And I said, oh, I'll have Walt put you on list. I'm sure he will. And they both immediately said, I know what story I want to do. And they've both been #1 bestsellers just like I have. And they both know how to do great launches with social media.
Yeah.
So this book is going to be really, it's going to go far.
It's going to go far. And it's going to be fun, too. That's the thing I love about it. Like everything else we try to do, this book is going to be fun because we're going to get to basically peek inside the lives of people who are in the biz, who know this stuff well, sharing their own stories. And those stories are going to be great. I just know they're going to be great. They're going to be like, you can't get done reading them fast enough to get to the next one because they're going to be like, oh, my God, I can't wait to get to the next one. It's going to be so good.
Well, and I liked how you shared it with us that the format is similar to Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yes.
Well, I got to be honest with you. I don't know if I've ever read that book. So I went out on Amazon and I started reading the preview pages, and I'm like, oh, I get it. Each story encapsulates something where you can feel inspired as the reader.
Yes, inspired, something feeling good, right, uplifting, anything like that. And that's why Jack Canfield was so successful and is so successful with his not just one book, it's a big series now. I mean, he's got more co-authors than you can possibly shake a stick at. He sold hundreds of millions of copies of that thing. So, yeah, it was very successful, and it's actually one of the things that proved to me that we need more positive entertainment because he put that stuff out there and people ate it up. So that just motivated me to say, well, let's go ahead and do this book thing. And of course, everybody on our team was like, yeah, let's go for it. This is great. I have to also throw in one other thing. When I was first floating the idea, I had a few people say to me, wow, you want to get how many coaches? 50 coaches? And I have to admit, it's a lot of work to go reach out to enough to get 50 coaches to sign up, but I'm convinced we're going to get there. It's just
absolutely, and who knows, and it's like you shoot for 50, you may end up with 30, 35, but the book ends up being full.
Oh, yeah.
Or you end up with 75, and now you even have that many more to select from. So,
And I'm hearing a lot of people who are responding and saying they want to do it. A lot of them are saying, I want to do more than one story. So let's say you get 35 of them. Now you got 70 stories right there if they all do 2 on average. You get up to 50, now you got 100 stories. And, I mean, if it gets big enough, I'm not sure how we'll be able to print the thing because it'll be so big.
Or we'll have 2 volumes.
Perhaps, yeah. Maybe we do it in 2 volumes or a series of volumes or something like that. In fact, I was even thinking, what if this becomes successful enough that people really want to have more and more of it, so we create like a monthly publication of it? Can you imagine that?
Here's what I know about living a life where I live through the filter of law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
If you take one step towards the thing that feels good to you, then when you do that, that step in itself will give you the feedback that you need in order to know to keep going or what's next.
Yeah.
Or take a right turn, or,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I didn't think to include that. So it's like just getting on the path and taking progressive steps moving forward will always give you the insight that you need to keep going and to keep going. And who knows what it'll turn into.
And that's just it. I mean, I toss that idea out right now. It may be the idea of the day, and then next week there's another one that one of us comes up with, and like, oh, this is even better, or whatever. But the point is, like you say, the ideas just keep coming. And when you're in that zone and they keep coming, you can pick and choose. Like, yes, I like that one. No, thank you. I won't take that one, but I will take that one. Like, this is good.
You know, I've been thinking, I told you yesterday off the show that I've been thinking about Oprah's career.
Oh, right, yeah.
And how, and just I'll point out one little aspect of it. You know, when she finally got to the point that she had her own show on, I think, ABC, and, you know, we were all I was one of the people tuning into it every day. Over time, it started to get a sense of momentum that everybody who had a great idea wanted to pitch it on Oprah's show because they knew that she had market share like nobody else did.
Absolutely.
And if Oprah loved your thing, oh man, you were golden, especially if you could become one of her favorite things at Christmas time.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But if you think about, she had a 25-year career with ABC,
Mm-hmm.
and then she left and she went on to create her own network, and now she's got so many things coming out. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the commercials, but she now has a food line.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
She has a line of comfort foods.
Huh.
Things that, like, she's always loved macaroni and cheese.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like she has a macaroni cheese, but it has healthy things in it.
Oh, I see.
And she loves mashed potatoes, but it's made with cauliflower, so it's not all potato. But it's like, who would have thought? I mean, could she have even thought 30-plus years ago that she would have created her own network, her own magazine, her own food line, blah, 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 blah? No. She might have had a big, grandiose vision for something big, but I doubt she knew all those specific things.
The best part, too, is that all those networks she owns are called OWN.
Even better.
Yeah, that's right.
But that, to me, and it really falls in line with what my win, the win that I just talked about is that I don't really know the specifics of what's in my future career-wise. Mm-hmm. But I have a feeling of how I will feel when I'm in it.
That's a great place to be.
And that's what I've been really focused on this week, you know, in my vacation week, because I have the time to do it, where I'm focusing on what do I want it to feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And like this conversation I had with this gentleman this morning, it's like, oh, my God, that's what it feels like. It's just energy of something in the motion and where you're creating new ideas. And it's like, I love to be a part of creation of something new.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and especially if my skill set is a part of it. It's like, oh, my God, even better.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know where my career is going to go, you know, 40 years from now. But I know if I keep going one step at a time in the direction I want to go, and I keep my, you know, focus on what feels good, wherever it takes me, I'm going to like it.
Oh, sure. And this actually ties in with what we talked about a couple shows ago. I can't remember exactly when it was, about how what you really want to be doing is thinking about it in terms of like being in alignment and then being out of alignment to your own inner being. And so you go to be out of alignment, and then you enjoy the journey back to alignment. And that's what you're talking about right now. You're enjoying that journey back to alignment, which is very cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so our topic for today is how and where do you receive your guidance?
Which is a good topic. It ties right in. And by the way, speaking of guidance, if you're listening and you're enjoying this, you know, give a little guidance to some of your friends. Let them tune in too, because they're going to like this one as much as you do. So you'll put out something on social media saying, "I'm listening to LOA today on guidance." So go ahead, tell us about guidance.
Perfect. Well, you know, guidance may be a word that I've been using from my religious upbringings. Mm-hmm. I don't know if guidance is the word that everybody uses. But I was kind of raised in the idea that a power greater than me would always be available from the space of infinite intelligence to provide guidance along the way for me.
Okay.
Well, then as I came into law of attraction, I started to understand how our emotions, how we feel in any given moment, are actually pieces of guidance for us to help us know where we are in relationship to where we're wanting to go.
Okay.
But what I have found, both in my practice as a life coach as well as my own life, is oftentimes that's a lofty idea, but knowing what it looks like, sounds like, tastes like when you get guidance is kind of another story.
And I think part of that story is perhaps starting with where does it come from? I mean, or to put it another way, where do you feel like it comes from?
So from my old religious model, I would say it came from God.
Okay.
Today, I would say it comes from source energy or from the universe.
Okay.
But how we recognize guidance, maybe that's what I'm really wanting to say, how we recognize guidance is kind of the crux of the matter. Because people don't always know, okay, so if I'm tapping into God, or at least I'm asking God a question, or I'm praying for something specifically, or I'm requesting something of the universe, and that was just me saying, here's many different ways that people do their asking. Do people know when they get the answer that the answer has arrived? Because lots of times, at least I know in my own personal journey of learning how to discover guidance, I had been getting guidance left, right, and all over. I just didn't know that was guidance.
Well, that ties in really nicely with what Cindy and I were talking about this morning, because she made mention of a quote from the Pam Grout book, E Squared, in which Pam says that, according to her, scientists say that we receive, through our five senses, 400 billion bits of information per second every day, and we're able to actually process 2,000 bits per second every day, which means we're missing out on, like 2 million times the amount that we actually process. So that kind of feeds your argument, I would say.
Well, and so I'll give you an example. I was telling you the other day about how my girlfriend Keisha just went through a situation with her laptop where her hard drive crashed.
Right.
Got the blue screen of death.
Oh, no.
And I asked her, I said, well, but you've made a backup of your data, right? And she went, no. Now, here's what's really ironic. We were talking about it a little bit later, and she said, like literally, like 3 or 4 days before this happened, a thought went through her head that said, back up your data.
Really? Wow.
And I said, you did? She goes, I did. And she said, I was thinking about it like, yeah, that's probably a good thing to do, but I really didn't give it a whole lot of a priority.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not, and so to me, that was her receiving guidance.
Yeah.
But because she didn't recognize it in the moment that was guidance that needed to be heeded right now, she didn't follow it. She kind of made it oh yeah, that's just kind of a nice little idea, and I'll get to it one day.
So that raises the first question. Assuming that we can actually detect that it's guidance, how do we detect it? How do we notice it?
Well, learning to tune in to your own senses, to me, is a key element. So what does that mean? Well, everybody, being different, has different ways they receive information on a more primary level. Like we've talked about how you receive information, or you're very tuned into things from an auditory perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very tuned into things both from a visual way, like I see pictures,
okay,
but also I also get internal dialogue a lot. Some people may receive information on a kinesthetic feeling way. Like I'll give you an example here. When I was married, my husband and I would be driving somewhere, and one of the things that always fascinated me about him is we'd be in some really thick traffic, and all of a sudden he would kind of like, if I say jerk the car, for him it's more like it was the most smooth jerk you could make. It was an abrupt move, and he would change lanes, And as he was doing it, another car, had he not abruptly changed lanes, another car would have slammed into him.
Oof.
Because they weren't paying attention.
Wow.
And that kind of thing happened over and over and over. And he now drives over the road, big trucks, and he was telling me that his instructor was even saying, "How did you know to do that?" And he's like, "I don't know, I just knew."
Oh, wow.
Well, his primary modality that he receives information from the universe is through his inner feeling senses. So he doesn't put words to the guidance that comes to him. He just feels it. And then, like in car situations, he just knows to make a move, make a change, do this, do that. And that guidance has kept him from getting in accidents. It's kept probably many people from getting in accidents because he gets out of the way. So that's how he receives information.
You know, as you say that, it occurs to me that I think probably most of us feel something at one time or another. Like, well, we can't attribute it to anything. And I'm wondering if that's the same thing as what you're describing there. It doesn't necessarily mean we know how to take action on whatever it is. We may not even know what the action is. But, I mean, how often have we felt I can remember one time that Louise and I, it was actually our honeymoon. We did honeymoon part 1 and honeymoon part 2. And honeymoon part 2 was to Barbados. So we were in Barbados, and we were in the main town, which is Bridgetown. And we were just kind of walking around, getting to know the town and so forth, and getting kind of tired, and we're thinking about getting some lunch and maybe just going into the local park there and so forth. So Louise proposed, well, let's go into the park and just walk around a little bit. So we took like 3 steps toward the park, and all of a sudden I got this feeling on the back of my neck and down my spine of just like all my hairs standing up on end. And when I looked around, there was no visible reason for it. I mean, it was a sunny day. There were people around. It was, blue sky, puffy clouds. There was no danger of any kind anywhere. And I just stopped. And she said, "What is it?" I said, "It doesn't feel right." And she says, "Well, then let's go with that." I said, "Okay." What do you want to do? And she says, "Let's turn around and go the other direction." Okay. And to this day, I have no idea what it could have been. What I do know is that when we turned around, we were facing the main street that goes down to the dock where the ship is, and we're trying to figure out, well, where do we go next? And a cab comes over and stops and says, "Do you need a lift?" And we said, "Sure." And so we got a cab ride. And as we got the cab ride, he's taking us back to where we were staying, and we got to talking to him, got to know him, and ended up hiring him to give us a tour of the island the next day. Now, was that the reason for the hair standing up on the back of my neck? I have no idea. Or was there actually some danger in the park that we were going to that I couldn't tell you what it was? I don't know.
Well, see, you bring up an interesting point because you kind of went to what I consider the first natural default place that many people I've talked to go to, is where the first thought is something wrong?
True.
Is there danger? And let's just say, for the sake of argument for your story, let's say we could know what it is. And maybe it was something that it simply was there to give you something to get your attention, which is what caused you to mention it to Louise. And then she had the next piece of the guidance, which is let's just turn and go the other way. Mm-hmm. Because that would be my advice if you, as you were asking, well, what do you do when you get something? Well, if you're not comfortable someplace, go somewhere else. Don't ask why and is there really something dangerous lurking behind, the scenes? It's like, just do something else. Because your guidance will tell you, if you go to a place that's also not good, you'll get the next piece of guidance.
So
but
maybe
in this case, who's not to say that this was to set you up for the perfect synchronicity, because just the right cab driver who could give you a tour and enhance your honeymoon part 1 was waiting for you, but had you continued to walk in the direction you had been, you would have missed him.
That would make sense. And Steve, that was his name, Steve. Steve was terrific. I mean, he was like it was like having your best friend show you around town, that kind of thing. And we got to know him really well. He gave us a complete tour of the island the next day. He took us to some really great spots. I mean, it was just a really, really good day. So maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was just the universe tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, there's something good over here."
Well, and learning how to read your guidance, it's it's a big subject. I won't lie to you. It's not something that I did overnight. It was definitely a process because you have to learn how to trust. First, you have to be aware of some piece of information coming into your world, and then second, you try to decipher what it means, and then you have to kind of trust what it means. And then do you trust it enough to take action on it? Or maybe the action is to do nothing. It's just a piece of information.
And I have no idea how to categorize that experience because I just don't know what was the motive behind it. I can tell you what the result was, but I don't know what the motive was.
Well, and I will tell you, in this subject that we're talking about with guidance, I have found that, at least for me in my experience, I could not do it deliberately by starting at step one. I would start almost at the end, like just like with my friend with the laptop. It's kind of like, okay, her what's the word? Hard drive crashed.
Right.
She didn't have her documents saved.
Right.
And in that conversation, talking about that, that's when she went, oh, I remember hearing in my head the other day, save or back up your documents.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like going backwards, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, in hindsight, but here's what I've really honed in on the last couple of years of my life. Because so many times, and I'm going to go back to something my husband used to say a lot. We'd be driving around somewhere, and he'd say, should we go left or right? And I'm like, I don't know, let's go right. And we'd go right, and sure enough, we'd get lost. And he goes, you know what? My gut said to go left, but I followed you because you said go right. He goes, I should have gone with my first mind. I should have gone with what came to me. And I said, then why didn't you? And he goes, because I'm not trusting it.
It's funny. Louise and I do the same thing. I mean, exactly the same thing. Seriously. We'll come to an intersection. Which way to go? She'll say, go right. I'll go right, even though I felt like left. And sure enough, it didn't turn out to be good. And it's not just once. I don't learn from this. I just keep doing the same behavior over and over.
Point. Like, so if you ever get sick and tired of not following the guidance and I promise you that's guidance. When you had a hunch to go left and you later found out, yep, we should have gone left, that's your inner guidance telling you which way to go. And it doesn't matter what source it's coming from. The point is you were getting guidance, but because you didn't acknowledge it in the way that you recognized, oh, this is actually guidance telling me which way to go, you didn't know to follow it.
Well, if that is guidance, then I have to say, now I understand why it is that people can't tell me what guidance is, because I can't tell me what that is. I can't tell you what it is. All I know is, I mean, a hunch is actually giving it more power than it was. It was just like this like, what is it? I don't even know how to say it. Just a feeling is the best thing I can think of to describe it. Just like this sense of a little quick flash of something. And that was it.
Yes. And I will tell you that in almost every case I can think of, the hunch or the flash is just that. It's so subtle that it's very easy to miss if you're not paying attention. And so this is kind of like my big rah-rah, get on a soapbox. Hello, everybody. If we really want to live a life deliberately in the direction we want it to go, we have to start paying attention to the signals, the signs, the hunches that are coming to us. And if nothing else, just say them out loud and go, is this something of importance that I should pay attention to?
Okay, well, let's stick with that for a moment. And let me ask a follow-up question. How do we tell the difference between, I'll call it a genuine hunch and a misleading hunch? I don't know how else to describe it, but something that's the real deal and something that's, me just feeling like I've got an insect crawling on my back or something.
Well, okay, excellent question, and that to me is the question that anybody should be asking to if they want to follow true guidance. And here's my answer. You may like it, you may not. Just follow each one of them and see where it takes you. So
develop a body of evidence to check and compare and see how it's working out.
Because eventually, and this is what I found for me, eventually if you follow the one that ended up being a true piece of guidance, it will have a feeling, a sound, a vision, however you receive it. There will be something slightly different of its character as to the one that led you astray.
Hmm.
And you kind of won't know what that is until you start playing the game and just saying, I'm going to experiment. Now, I'm not talking about experiment with should I buy this house or this car or this car. Start with little teeny things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you're in the grocery store and you're looking at the apples and you're kind of getting this nudge, buy apples. Well, okay, buy them. You know what? And then when they come home, they might sit and end up rotting because you never were in the mood to eat apples. Or you might get home and all of a sudden somebody you know who loves to bake says, oh, my gosh, you have these great apples. I'm going to bake an apple pie. I'm so glad you have these apples on the counter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just one little something.
I mean, it sounds like it's not just starting with little things. It's just starting to pay attention to go with anything that comes along, really, as long as it's something that's not going to break your bank.
Exactly. Now, if you want something that's a little bit more tangible, like from a what's a good exercise that we can do, I mean, I know many people that use many different exercises. The one that works for me is yes, no.
Okay.
I tend to ask lots of questions, and I purposely ask yes, no questions of the universe. And from a starting perspective, I'll say, universe, give me something that feels like a yes. So I'm going to ask a question like, is my name Wendy? I know the answer is going to be yes. And then I'll notice, what does it feel like when I say my name is Wendy?
Now, how do you know that when you get that answer, it isn't just your conscious mind echoing back to you?
Okay, I don't know. Other coaches might go, that was a dumb answer, Wendy, but I'm going to say you don't know until you know. Because it's a getting to know what things feel like, sound like. It's you getting in touch with you. And most of us have never really gotten in touch with ourselves to really know what we sound like, what we feel like, what we look like.
So when you said earlier that you have to kind of get used to that signal, that's not the way you said it, but that's my way of hearing it, that there's a certain texture to it or a taste to it that makes it a little bit different, and you get used to that texture or that taste, then you start to recognize, oh, that's one of the genuine kind of signals I'm getting.
Yeah, so like when I say, okay, is my name Wendy? I have a sensation that's kind of in the back of my throat.
Oh.
Not even the back, in the front of my throat, like where a man's Adam apple would be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then if I say, my name is Walt, I kind of have a sensation in the pit of my stomach.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So that's how it is for me. And so if I do that a couple times where each time I know the answer is yes, if I keep getting the same sensation in the same place in my body, that I know is my yes signal. Or such and such is my no signal. Now, for me, they came in feeling sensations in my body, very subtle, but definitely there. For you, they may come in sounds or tones.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
For someone else, they may come in pictures.
Mm-hmm.
You might see a sky. You might see a cloud. You might see your mother. But it can come in many different ways. But here's the point, and I know you were asking the question, how do you know you're not just making it up?
Yep.
You test it over and over. And I'm doing it like something like saying, my name is Walt. That is not hurting me or anybody else by testing just to see.
No, it's a safe question.
What signal comes to me when I say something I know is not true?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's like testing the equipment.
Yeah, testing the equipment to see what signals work for you.
Mm-hmm. This actually makes a lot more sense to me than some of the stuff that I've heard. I've heard a number of people talk about listening to, they don't necessarily call it guidance, but messages or spirit guides or whatever else. And the instruction, the explanation always felt very wanting. This is the most detailed and most useful I've ever heard, so this is good.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I kind of made it up on the fly, so that makes me feel good.
Well, you're doing well then. I mean, pat your fly on the back. He's doing very well.
she fly. Maybe I have a spirit fly and I don't know
That's
it.
right. Yes, it's a spirit fly. We'll be back with another spirit fly.
But like, let's say when the show's over, here's what happens for me typically. I'm usually pretty amped up.
Yep.
And so I may ask myself, should I eat now? And I'll just pay attention to what signal comes to me.
So you don't even ask yourself if you're hungry?
No.
Okay. That's going to take a little getting used to.
I might ask, am I hungry? But I'll tell you what I know about me is when I'm amped up with a lot of energy running through my body, I just know I'm in a transition period where I want to go to something else.
Uh-huh.
Food happens to be the first thing I think of.
Oh, okay.
But I want to retrain myself that I don't use food as a transition tool anymore.
Ah, okay.
And so for me, that's why food is probably going to be, I'm already thinking about, I'd love to go out to eat afterwards. But I don't know if my body is really going to even be hungry. So that's why my question will be, is it a good time for me to eat?
Ah, okay.
And if I get no, then I go, oh, okay, what else might I want to do?
See, with Louise, it isn't so much a question of whether we're going to go out to eat or whether we're going to eat. It's always, we're going to eat the next meal. What are we going to have? I guess that's a different question, isn't it?
It is. But what are we going to have you can't ask, that's not a yes or no.
No, it's not.
You know, and it doesn't mean you can't ask those kinds of questions, but I think when you're learning how to receive guidance so you know what those signals are, I think yes-no questions are usually the easiest to begin with.
Well, actually, I think, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that is actually Louise's way of getting guidance, because this is the way the conversation usually goes. And it isn't just about food. It can be about, she's trying to remember something. And so she'll look at me and she'll ask, so what was that thing? And she'll start describing it, but she can't name what it is. And I'm sitting there absolutely clueless. I have no idea what she's talking about. And just looking at me, she'll say, oh, yeah, that's what it is. And I'll say, well, why did you ask me? And she says, because I always get the answer when I look at you. What? But I didn't do anything. She says, I know, but I always get the answer when I look at you. So,
you know,
she's
and
following
I think
guidance.
many people have their own way of getting guidance. They may not call it that, but they just know the right thing to do. They know what the next step is, and they may not even know how or why they know what they know.
That would certainly fit this. Yeah, very much.
And I think that fits many people. And the only reason I purposely break it down is because I'm a teacher. And people ask me the question, well, how do you know if you're receiving guidance? Well, I wouldn't know unless I started to break it down in my own awareness. And so it's kind of like, have you ever gone from a process in life that's autopilot, and then someone asks you, how do you do that?
Oh, yeah.
And your brain goes, gosh, I don't know. I've been doing it autopilot for so long. Let me think. What steps do I take?
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets very cumbersome as you're trying to figure out your manual steps. Well, that's kind of what I've spent my life doing, is taking things that for me were autopilot and then figuring out how to manually backstep to figure out what are the steps so that I can teach it to somebody else.
So it's not cumbersome anymore. You've actually gotten pretty good at it.
At the teaching part, yeah, because I see everything now in what are the steps. You know, I know I do this thing naturally, so what are the steps that got me to doing it naturally? Just like everybody who drives a car knows that, like on day one, you were told put your hands at 10 and 2, you know, strap yourself in with the seat belt, adjust the rear view mirror, adjust the side mirror, and you do all this stuff before you even turn the key. Well, you and I, we get in the car now, we don't think about that. We get in the car, we're talking to somebody, or we're eating a taco, or we're turning on the radio, and then later on you go, did I do those steps? Probably, maybe, I don't know, I got here, what does it matter? Well, that's the whole point. We learn how to do things that eventually become autopilot that sometimes, and especially in this arena of guidance, we have actually modeled other people and how they do things, or how they know, oh, I should do it this way, or oh, I should change courses and go another direction. And it's something we've all done without words. Like nobody set out to teach us how to do this. We watch somebody else or we experience somebody else doing it, and we kind of absorbed that same procedure that they used.
I was just realizing that my driving instructor from when I was 18 would probably be cringing at the model that I'm setting in terms of what people should do, because you talked about the hands going to 10 and 2. I start at 10 and 2, then my right hand goes to 4, my left hand goes to 6, my right hand goes up to 2, my left hand goes to 9. I mean, he would just be flipping out if he saw this. Sorry, I just had to throw that in. It's totally irrelevant.
Yeah, I rarely do 10 to 2 anymore, but, those are the rules. That's where we started, and
yeah, right.
modified.
Then I learned how to tell time, and I was using the whole clock.
Exactly. But, when it comes to guidance, we all receive guidance, whether we're aware of it or not. But for the purpose of this conversation, I think what is most relevant and what is most beneficial for all of us is to learn it where it's not just behind the scenes happening without our knowledge, but where we can begin to interact with our guidance in a way that is deliberate and purposeful, so that when especially if you're asking for some really big things in life or you're wanting to get some really good information, it's so helpful when you know that, all the beings of the universe are at your disposal wanting to provide for you whatever information you desire. Wouldn't it be great to know how to receive the information that they provide?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly answers a question for me, or at least starts to answer the question about how do you listen to your inner being, because that was always a real stumbling block for me. I mean, just this morning we were talking about in the morning show that for her it's never been a big problem. Cindy's never had a problem in terms of tapping into what she's feeling. I mean, if it feels wrong, it feels really wrong and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it was more along the lines of, well, I've had the male conditioning, so much of the time I didn't feel anything at all. And now I'm supposed to feel something. Well, I don't feel anything. What do I do with that? So it's actually a very important question for me, understanding that there is a way for me to consistently receive information from my inner being. That's a big point. And plus, I also picked something up from Abraham Hicks. I can't remember if it was one of the books or if it was a recording I was listening to, but it was in the last day or two. They pointed out that we all have a built-in way to receive guidance from our inner being, and that guidance is our emotions. And I said, oh yeah, I guess that does qualify, doesn't it? Because when we're feeling good, that means we're in alignment with our inner being. When we're not feeling good, when we're feeling bad, that means we're out of alignment. So yeah, that is a form of message. And when I heard that in my head and thought about it for a second, I almost took a sigh of relief, because now I had a consistent way of receiving information. And now what I view the conversation today about is giving me some added information, like, okay, here's how I can expand the dialogue. It's like, oh, okay, this is sounding good.
I remember probably when I was in my 20s, I know that I was purposely wanting to, at that time I would call it hear from God. Today I would just call it receive guidance. And how I received information, it was like a ticker tape, like, the stock market ticker tape that goes through the big stock market exchange.
Right.
Or like you're watching CNN News, there's like the ticker at the bottom where there's just text rolling.
Exactly.
Well, I used to see that literally in my mind's eye. It was as though a sentence was going across my forehead.
Okay, now that's weird. Now, I'm sorry, but that's just weird.
I can't say that I know anybody else who's had that experience, but that was probably one of the first ways I started to receive guidance. And it wasn't like I'd get a paragraph of information. It would be more like a sentence, and I would see the sentence loop, just like you do on CNN, where it's the same thing that keeps looping until they put in something else. And so if I wanted to know something, I might get, go to Taco Bueno.
Wow.
No, I didn't really get that back then. I just made that up. I must be hungry.
Got a little food on the brain there?
Yeah, but whatever the subject might be, like let's say I'm wanting to register for new courses. Let's say it's a new semester and I'm in college. I might just see in my little ticker tape, select algebra and science.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that would be like I'd look at. I was aware of it. I acknowledged I had this phrase float through my brain that was right in front of my forehead. And then I'd ask, okay, does that mean I should be taking algebra and science? I'm like, well, why would I get it if not? Now, this is where I test it. If I love algebra and science, well, that kind of becomes okay, cool. And for me, it was a validation of two courses that I knew I wanted to take anyway. But I was just kind of checking in with my inner being to make sure that algebra and science were really a good thing for me. And when I saw the ticker tape say, take algebra and science, I'm like, okay, let's do it.
So then I have to ask another question then. Because so far what we've been talking about has been getting the guidance from within. A lot of people talk about signs and so forth, getting information from outside. And so the question that raises in my mind is that inner guidance?
I believe yes. So I'll give you an example from this morning.
Okay.
So I opened up my email. I belong to many different people's newsletters.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know I want to stay on their email list, but I'm just not into them right now, I just delete them until I'm back in the mood to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so there was this one gal I normally have been hitting delete. And this morning I hesitated. And the hesitation was something for me to that got my attention, because normally I don't hesitate. And I'm like, And I asked the question, is there something in here I should read? And I got yes. I'm like, okay. So I read her story in her email, and when I read one sentence, I'm going to use the words, it lit up to me, but it's like it had a feeling of excitement.
Okay.
And the phrase was something like, I almost missed an opportunity. And I went, oh. And then I just kind of asked the question, am I about to miss an opportunity? And I got no. And I went, okay, but there's something about an opportunity? Yes. Okay. So it wasn't guidance for me to do anything. There was no action required. It was just information being kind of thrown out there in advance. And then this other guy I told you about who has this project that he wanted to work with me on, he and I connected like maybe 2 hours later.
Oh, okay. So that's where you're seeing the connection.
That was like, oh, that's an opportunity. And where the phrase almost missed an opportunity is because he had called me while I was on the show yesterday, and I couldn't click over to get his call.
Right, okay.
So in my mind, and this is just how it worked in my brain and how it was my validation, that was the universe's way of saying what appeared as though it was a missed opportunity to take his call is not a missed opportunity at all, because it's an opportunity that you're going to follow through on. But so I got that piece of validation through an email today that truly had nothing to do with an offer that I was going to partake in. It was just a phrase that jumped out at me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that phrase was something I then was asking for greater clarity.
Well, that sounds a lot like an experience that Louise once had, and we always just took it as something to laugh at. But you tell me, maybe there was some guidance in there, and I have no idea what it would be. She was at her brother's house visiting, and at one point she wanted to find her brother, so she went upstairs, couldn't find him upstairs, and set out to the atmosphere like, where's Paul? And there was a television on, and the person on the television said he's downstairs in the basement. So she went downstairs to the basement, and that's where he was.
Oh, that is absolutely the way guidance works. That's absolutely. She asked a question, the answer came. It came through the television, and then boom, that's exactly how it happened. That's how guidance works.
So this wasn't just something to laugh at. This was an actual deal.
That was an actual deal. So maybe in your life at the time, you may have categorized it as a coincidence. there are no coincidences. Not
Yeah,
the way
I've
I
been
think
learning
about it.
that, and it's disquieting. But every time that I think there's a coincidence and realize that there are no coincidences, all of a sudden, the idea that there's no coincidences turns this coincidence into something. Oh my God!
That was like purposeful.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because there are no coincidences.
or perhaps to put it another way, everything good that happens is a coincidence because it happens at the same time as something else. They're all coincidences, and that doesn't mean that they're not relevant to each other, that they don't relate.
So here's a way to perhaps look at this. This might be the easiest thing or easiest key point that I could possibly make. Every time you think something's a coincidence, instead of immediately judging it as a coincidence, maybe ask the question, what message is this thing wanting to bring to me?
And I can see how that takes
What
some
about
time because if you're used to the other modality, it takes a little time to discipline yourself to say, "Oh, wait, ask the question."
Yeah, or how could this be purposeful instead of a coincidence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Certainly, though, it's paying attention.
To run into I've had this a number of times in my life where I'm thinking about somebody, and the next thing I know, they text me or they call me on the phone. Is that a coincidence? I think not.
It's certainly
No.
very bang bang. It's like one after another.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything that's wrong in calling it a coincidence? No, there's no harm in it. But here's how I began to train myself to really be more in touch with the messages that the universe has for me, is that if somebody tells me, oh, I was just thinking of you, and here you are texting me,
Yep.
how I look at it is they're thinking of me, energetically sent a message to me, and I received it because all of a sudden the thought occurred to me, oh, I want to connect with that person.
Okay. Well, here's something that I know is something that happens regularly, and it's no coincidence. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
We're almost out of time. This happens every show.
Well, and so what's the message in that?
The message
when
is...
the clock almost strikes 5 Eastern time, it's time to end.
That's right. Well, it's also a reminder that I got to tell everybody, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so. You want to keep getting these episodes. I mean, the stuff that we talk into is not only mind-bending, but boy, does it really give you an education about how the law of attraction works. And it's fun, too. So subscribe by going to loatoday.net. Click on any of the subscribe buttons there. Or if you're on your iPhone, just go to the iTunes store or to your podcast app software that's built in. Click on either one of those. Click on the little magnifier. Type in LOA Today. Boom, will pop up. You just hit the subscribe button. You're done. Or on your Android phone, same thing. You just go to the Google Play Store. Search for LOA Today. Comes right up. Boom, click the subscribe button. You're done. And now you're following us every single time. So that's the other thing that happens at the end of the show every day. We tell everybody to do that.
Yep, we do.
The other thing that I want to tell people, and this is serious, I do want people to share the word, because the one thing we're finding is when people find us and they listen, they do listen to every episode. I mean, we kind of make fun about the subscribe thing, but people have been doing it, and we're seeing it in the analytics. People listen to every show, and the number of shows they're listening to is increasing every month by large amounts. So it means there's a lot of people out there who don't know about us who would very much enjoy the same experience. So please share it. Just tell other people that you know about the show, and that will help get the word out better than anything else we can do. And Wendy.
And you know, Walt,
what?
I was going to say, Walt, you told me in the very beginning when we started connecting that the thing that was behind you doing this show is that you were asking the question, why aren't there more positive things out there?
Yes.
And you actually are the answer to your question because you created something positive. And so that's really why we do what we do, is we're creating something positive in order to make a difference.
And the thing I love is not just me anymore. It's now all of us. We have a team of 6 people now creating something positive, and I just love it. So let's do it again tomorrow, Wendy. What do you think?
I'm going to be here.
All right. I'll be here, too. And we'll see you all tomorrow here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye now.